what is government's role in a space like yours play? What is the role of governance, the role of policymakers?
The government is actually doing very well on that front in that we've got the necessary systems in place. Right? We've got the necessary policies, the necessary acts in place and acts that govern that, The problem being now application of those acts and rules and regulations and policies from an employer and an employee point of view. That is the problem.
Who would you say is the most ideal client for not just for the sector that you're in, but for your company?
I'd say the mining industry. Yeah. The mining industry, they've got their own, like I said, own acts, own laws, own everything governing them in terms of the safety point of view. But I mean, you're underground, you're mining, the risks are always high. So we are trying to get into that space. It is not easy getting into the mining space in South Africa.
Now, building a global business takes so much courage and strength, and this next guest has done that. I can't wait for you guys to hear more about his story. As you're hearing it for the first time, I am hearing it for the first time as well. So please just sit back, relax, and let's welcome onto the show Samuel Hogah. I hope I'm saying your surname correctly, Samuel, but he is behind Principal Safety Hogah. Principal Safety Solutions, which is quite an interesting one. I mean, we normally talk about technology a lot in this show. We talk about tech, we talk about innovation, etc., etc. And the field that you're in is quite an interesting one for us to unpack. It is business, right? Because this is a business show, so we're going to be looking at the business of safety, the business of the space that you're in. So I hope that you're ready to answer all the questions.
Yeah, I'll try my best. Thank you for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to have been invited to this beautiful thing going on, by the way. Right? You are supporting me the best way you can. I'm excited.
Of course. Thank you, Samuel. I mean, one of the first questions that I'm always curious about is, as I said, like we want to understand this business that you're in quite robustly, and people who watch the show come from different parts of the world. And there's a lot of curiosity around sectors, particularly within the African context, that are ripe for opportunity and ripe for investment and ripe for service and ripe for, the next frontier of business in the continent. So I'm interested to hear more about what you are doing within this space. But before we get into that, if you could just explain to us what the business is and a little bit of the journey to getting it to where it is today.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. So Principal Safety Solutions is an occupational health and safety consultancy, right? And the name beckons solutions. So what we do is we identify any safety-related problems in all the respective industries, being construction, being mining, being production, whatever the case may be. And then we offer the relevant solutions to clients or to anybody who might need it, right? So an example would be you call me to your plant or your factory. And what we would then do is we do what we call a safety audit. That is now a diagnosis where we are looking at what you have in place versus what the government would like you to have in terms of compliance, right? We identify the gap, we offer recommendations and solutions to make sure that you don't lose money as a business from non-compliance, but also keeping your employees and other people on your side safe. So that is basically Principal Safety Solutions. One of our core business models is accredited training. Right? So we do training such as the usage of basic fire extinguisher, emergency evacuation, first aid, basic first aid or level 3 advanced first aid, incident investigation, so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell basically what Principal Safety Solutions is. We also ventured recently into the sales and distribution of personal protective equipment. So your work suit, your overalls, your safety shoes, your goggles, your hard hats, you name it. That's anything safety related. We try and have a foothold in there.
Mm. That gives us a context, really, of what to kind of anticipate in this conversation. I'm hearing two things. One being a service, right, which is what the core part of the business is, and then the other
Yeah.
being the products. So it's kind of two intertwining worlds
Hmm.
of what business is, right, service and product, and
Yeah.
so that's quite intriguing for me to kind of see how we're going to go about it, unpacking this conversation. Compliance being something that a lot of companies get to stumble upon when something wrong happens, right? It's like, oh, we didn't
Yeah.
know we were supposed to
Yeah.
be
I
compliant
should
here,
have done
and
that.
now
Yeah.
we now you're stuck with this
So that's
lawsuit
where
that's
we
gonna
come in then.
probably
Yeah.
that's how we're gonna rip you off your business, right? But one doesn't just stumble upon a business like this, Samuel. I'm quite intrigued about understanding how you fell into the space. What made you kind of decide to venture into a business of this capacity when it could have been anything else?
Yeah. So my safety journey started, I'd say, probably around 2016, 2017. I was once volunteering for a non-profit organization for some few years. And in that organization, you get switched around quite often. From one department to another, you learn on the job, you get some skills and technicalities and all those things. So you get fully equipped to help out in a certain area that you are volunteering in. And in that journey, one of the offices I was privileged to have held is that of a safety coordinator, right? Now that meant that I was responsible for the entire safety of the whole establishment. It had probably at the time over 1,000 people living and volunteering there. It has operations, it has a warehouse, it has distribution. It runs like more of a company, but it's a non-profit organization. So that is basically where my safety journey began. And I loved it, right? I loved it. I held on to it with both arms. I learned on the job. I had advisors and people just coaching me and holding my hands and everything. So I was like, no, this can actually be a career for me, right? After some time, of course, my service there had to come to an end. Now I have to go into the corporate world and officially get employed. So I worked for another company as well, also in the safety space, but it was more of a different side of safety. So it was focusing on one niche market of the entire safety spectrum. Worked there for about 3 years, got more knowledge and expertise, but in life, one wants to grow, right? We aspire to grow, we aspire to move on to greater things, to put things in place for family. You can't be stagnant in one place, right? So then I thought, I'm like, you know what? How about I start my own thing, right? Because at the time I had a lot of ideas and plans and things I wanted, the company to implement, but of course there's hierarchy. Okay, you have to go to your boss who can either approve or disapprove, whatever the case may be. But I was like, you know what? Let me just start my own thing, start my own journey, and then apply all these ideas that I have into something that belongs to me, essentially. And so that was basically what led to the birth of Principal Safety Solutions. Yeah,
Yeah, I
we
like the
have only
idea that
been
it's.
in existence for about 6 months. Yeah,
Oh,
still
wow,
fairly new. Yeah, still a baby.
that is
We
quite
call it, but
interesting.
hopefully we're gonna start running.
You're still eating the, what is it, the porridge. The next step is solid foods,
Yes,
right? That's where you're
that's
going.
it. That's it.
But what I find interesting is that your experience is from the ground up. And by that I mean that you got the on the job training, right? It's not just that you just found an
Yeah.
opportunity and you were like, let me get into it. Which a lot of entrepreneurs, nothing wrong with that either, but that's where a lot of entrepreneurs might find themselves being like, oh, I just heard it, this was a cool thing to be in, and I just stumbled upon it. But for you, it was something that you grew within the space and you developed within the space to then have that insight and knowledge about how to go about starting your own business around it. And
Yeah.
knowing that, that route in and of itself is quite a challenging decision to make in and of itself. I mean, it's not every day that one can start a business. One thinks about the
Yeah.
fears around business. It's just something mind
It was
blowing.
scary. It
Yeah, I
was
can
scary
imagine.
because you don't know, are you gonna, is it gonna take off? Is it gonna succeed? Are you gonna have to go back now looking for a 9 to 5 again? So it needed a lot of calculative, but having the faith that it's all
Mm.
now in your hands and you have to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. But a business of this magnitude, I mean, you're speaking about things that have people's lives, right, at risk, things that could potentially help or someone's life in the process, right? What you guys get to kind of do. What would you not necessarily say that you had learned prior to starting the business that became really a beyond just business mission, right? A beyond just doing it for the sake of having a business or having income. Like, what was your mission statement that made you want to go, it's bigger than myself, therefore I need to start a business to get this mission done?
You can't put price on life.
Mm,
It's life is sacred. You only have one. If that ends, that's it. At least for a very long time. And I'm very passionate about that. So I went into a career whereby now you have to look beyond the sustenance of making a living. You have to look beyond the fact that it pays the bills and gets you going back. At the end of the day, you don't want to get to a point where you are bored. So you have to venture into something you love and have passion for. And besides the fact that I've got passion for safety, I've got passion for life in general as a whole. So that was my drive into, what, let's combine the two. Let's combine the two and see how we can run with that and see how far that can get us. So I guess that was my motivation and the factor behind me, number one, going into the industry of safety, but also incorporating it with life in general, because nobody wants to go to work and then eventually get a phone call from management saying that employee X is normal. It's a very hard pill to swallow. Everybody wants to go back home to their family and their loved ones safely. And so that has been the motivation and the mission behind PSS, as we call it, to get that going. Yeah.
that's beautiful. I think these are the types of businesses that we call important businesses, right? These are humanity-driven businesses that far and
Mm.
beyond the metrics and the everything else that we think about when we think about business. But this is something that I think I'm really excited to explore and kind of delve into a little bit further. Now, when you are deciding to go into the entrepreneurial route of it, which again, as we had said earlier on, is a daunting exercise to have to think that through. You sit with yourself and you have to ask yourself questions and respond those questions to yourself as well. So what conversations were you having with yourself when you were making that jump? Were you concerned from a financial standpoint? Kind of, were you
Yeah.
concerned about from a time perspective that this will take all of your time?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the concerns that you
Mm.
had, and what are the answers that you had then told yourself in that process to then kind of lead you into finally and fully stepping into it 6 months ago?
Yeah. It was exciting. It was exciting but daunting at the same time. Because now, in order to be hands-on 100%, you have to quit your 9 to 5, right? Now, your 9 to 5 was more of a comfort zone. Now, there's a steady income coming from somewhere. You are venturing into something that you're not sure will sustain and go there longer. But you had an option of, okay, let me put one foot in my 9 to 5 and the other foot into the business. Attention is going to be divided. So one of the conversations I had with myself was, am I ready? Is this the right time? And do I have the financial resources to carry me for at least 6 months while I'm working for this thing to take on? Now, mind you, I'm a family man, right? I'm married, I've got a wife. We have to consider that as well. Okay, so it has to be now a family meeting, right? And consider the facts. can I stop working full time and go into this entrepreneurial journey with all my attention? If so, okay, do I have enough capital that is going to either sustain this business up until it takes off and starts working on its own, but also at the same time sustain you and your family so that you don't go hungry, you know? So that played a lot on my mind. It gave me a lot of sleepless nights and everything. But at the end of the day, I think that's one of the benefits I have in the type of wife I have. She is super supportive. She's been there from day one. We sat down, we spoke about it. We looked at the costs, the reality of starting a business, and the fact that it will take a while until we start seeing results. Are we ready for that? And then we added one and one together. It made sense financially, it made sense on paper. And then we just took a huge leap of faith and ran with it. So that has been the main concern. It was from a time point of view and a financial point of view. Because when you're self-employed, you don't clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. Essentially, you're working 24 hours, for as long as you are starting the business, So that's also another challenge I had to contend with. Yeah.
They say you leave your 9 to 5 for a 24/7, basically, because that's what
Yeah.
when you're kind of an entrepreneur, you're working on the clock like all the time. It does not stop, right? It's either your
Exactly.
body's working or your
Exactly.
mind is, like, but it just never stops.
Exactly.
But it's beautiful to hear that you
There's
had the
something
support
working.
that was necessary. Yeah, you had the necessary support. And I asked this question particularly, Samuel, because a lot of people, especially within the African context, you're based in South Africa, that's correct, right?
Yeah.
Now, within the African context, this kind of, I with the recent guest that I had, I kind of spoke about how the idea of entrepreneurship being considered a hobby within the South African and the African communities, it's that side
Yeah.
thing. Vastly because of what you had explained, the idea that it might take time to kind of kick start off, and it could be something that requires a little bit of patience, but within the cultural context, it's like, why, this thing's not bringing in money, let it go. But if we kind of
Mhm.
reshape our mindset from an entrepreneurial standpoint, the way that you are explaining it now, it kind of gives a little bit of ease, right? The approach that you took it by sitting your family down and having the conversation and looking at the costs and being calculated in how you're approaching it, I think is something that could be an adapted model that many people can take from your story to say, how is the approach, right? And are we
Yeah.
planning efficiently? Are we realistic? You mentioned the word realistically, right, as
Mm.
well, and being upfront. So I think it's such a powerful kind of way for us to kickstart this conversation off in getting that framework and that picture into play. You
Mm.
mentioned again
Mm.
from a financial standpoint, what does a business like this, is this a high cost capital requiring type of business? I could, for me, I'm only imagining, tools and things that are required on site.
Yeah.
But is it a capital intensive business to start, or is it fairly kind of, a little bit more lenient to get into?
It, it is lenient. I would say it's a bit of both. It's not as intensive capitally
Okay.
in terms of finances as other companies. With our industry, you can ease your way into getting your equipment and all your other assets slowly, as you get more clientele and you get more business going. With us, the main thing that I would say is a bit capital intensive would be the setup of the whole business, because we're dealing with compliance, right? We're dealing with
Mm.
safety. It is very, very compliance intensive. So that's where a huge chunk of capital and finances and investments will go. Registrations, being on this professional body, getting certification from that body, getting accreditation to do that training. That is primarily the main things that are actually a bit more, capital intensive. But in terms of equipment for certain aspects of the company, gradually that gets built up. So I'd say it's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the
Mm.
middle there.
And the nice thing is that those would be once-off costs, right? But those would then accumulate,
Yes,
which I think is the nice thing about this
exactly.
business is that it kind of,
Yeah,
you gradually go and grow alongside with it. And so
thank you.
again, I think that the idea of having the experience would probably also be the most expensive capital intensive thing. Like you
Yeah,
learned on the job. So that was a good thing for you. But for someone else, perhaps they would have to spend resources on getting the
mm-hmm,
knowledge, right? Or the skills, the skill set, I
mm-hmm,
guess is probably
mm-hmm.
the most expensive thing and the most highly efficient asset within this business. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, very much so, very much so. So I was in a previous position. So with our industry, of course, you would have to get some form of qualification, whether it be in college, university, or whatever the short course you do. But after that, you still have to now go on to the actual practicality of getting the hands-on experience, and you only get better over time through application. Right? So with me,
Yeah.
it was more or less the other way around. I learned on the job, and while learning on the job, then I was still doing my courses on the side and sort of tailoring my studies to sort of now have on paper what I have been already doing practically, you know. So
Yeah.
you're right, it's a huge advantage for me to just be thrown into the deep end. I was forced to swim, and thank God I actually managed to swim without drowning. So that's one huge capital that I can say I was spot on.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you land your first client? I mean, I can only like, was it like 50 cold emails or did you call? I don't, you hear stories like I called 500 people and no one said yes until what was your
Yeah.
first client? What did that experience look like for you?
I literally went and I was knocking on doors, right?
Yeah.
So I tried the email. I sent countless numbers of emails. So when I resigned from work for the first 2 weeks, I was just at home working from home and I was on laptop just identifying a number of potential clients and just bombarding them with business profile, list of services, just emails, emails, emails. But I was not getting any response. You know, others won't respond completely. Others will say, okay, we'll keep the information on file. We'll get you when you need it. And one thing that I've been blessed with is the gift of speech. So I know how to talk and present myself to some extent. So I'm
Mm.
like, you know what? Let's actually go door to door and knock on these companies, right? Because if I'm there, all they can say is no, but the mistake they make is actually listening to me for at least 10 seconds and already I've got my pitch in, right? So that's what I did. So I did that and then I went on to um, the company, you would know AfriCement, okay? They're one of the big cement companies, they make cement.
Mm-hmm.
I knocked on the door. Um, I presented myself nice and neatly. I told them what I'm about the venture, what I'm starting, and if they can just give me a chance, right? So I was speaking to at the time the safety manager of that plant, and he's like, you know what, Sam, you seem like a good guy. You know your story from how you're speaking. Sounds like you've been in the industry for long, right? Go get your ducks in one row and then come back and talk to me when you're ready. So at the time, I just planted the idea, went back, did the necessary paperwork that needed to be done just to make sure that compliance and all those things from a business point of view is met. Went back physically again, drove to the site, asked to speak to him. I'm like, my guy, I'm here. Right. The ducks that you wanted me to put in one row, we're good to go.
They
And
line
it
up.
was a matter of him just giving me that chance just to offer one service. I gave training of basic firefighting. He sat in that training and he was sold. From how the training was conducted to the professionalism of it and just articulation and all those things. And eventually we managed to bag that first client. Of course, a lot of paperwork needed for us to put that in writing and for that to be solidified, but eventually it worked out. Exciting, rushed home, told the wife, I'm like, hey, we got our first client. You know, we celebrated. It was a big win for the family and the company. Yeah, so that showed us that
Wow.
no, we're onto something. Yeah, exciting.
That's beautiful. That's such a beautiful story. And to bag one of the biggest manufacturers of cement is like something that I think it goes onto your profile immediately to speak again on your presentation skills, but also on the professionalism of what you guys were able to present. That it was well received by such a big company. That just speaks volumes to that as well. And was that your goal in the first place? Like, were the big guys, the big giants, and the big conglomerates and multinationals, is that your goal, or was that it just happened by chance to be one of the companies that opened the door?
Yeah, so we're going for everybody. We're going for everybody. We started off with the notion of we don't want to see companies. Of course, in actual fact, you've got the big giants and then you've got the medium ones and then the smaller ones. But we didn't want to focus too much on one area. We went for everybody, right? But we thought, okay, if we are able to bag a big client, then chances of getting other smaller clients will be easier. Because now we would have gained the confidence of, hey, Principal Safety Solutions is working with AFRICEN. AFRICEN is global, right? So why should I, as a medium or small company, not work with them? So that was at the back of our heads, but we went across the board. We're just bombarding everybody with information, with emails, cold calling, knocking on doors, and fortunately enough, it was one of the big ones that opened the door. Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool. And I'm quite curious now, like it's what type of approach do you see, or rather, what when you approach these types of companies, whether you're cold calling or you're directly going to them, what do you say to them? Like, is it companies that don't necessarily have any compliance currently in place? Do they companies that don't know about compliance in general? Companies that don't have a budget for compliance? Like, what is the biggest thing that you've seen and highlighted as being kind of the gap in the market that for you is something to kind of grab hold of at this moment? But because I've necessarily not had a lot of companies speak about this matter or even consider this, but from your point of view, how does that look like?
Yeah, so almost all of them are complying, right? Especially the big companies, because
Mm-hmm.
non-compliance is a huge risk they're not willing to take. And when you are offering your services, chances are there's probably two or three other companies either offering the same services as you or already in their system. So now you need to know what are you bringing that is different to what you already have, right? And in most cases, it's not maybe I'm bringing a different service because it's practically more or less the same service, but we are bringing in a different way of doing it. So one of the things we pitched when I was speaking to my contact in AFRICEN was, as Principal Safety Solutions, right? If you give us this chance, for at least the first 3 months when we come and offer our services to you, transportation charge and everything will be absorbed by us. Okay. So we're taking a bit of a knock. Traveling from our offices to where they are to offer our services, most companies will put some kind of transportation charge. We absorbing that. Right? Number two, other companies, once they are done with the training and they have to issue you the certification of competency, you are charged for that certificate to be issued and sent to you. That's what some of them do. We came in with the approach that, look here, we are going to send you those certifications on us. Okay. So we are bringing the same service, but we are offering you more than us just training you, for example. We're saving a bit of money, right? We're going to go the other way because we're establishing a relationship. So that's one aspect which eventually got us going. But the other main thing which I think gave us a bit of an advantage was appearance. Okay, we tried our best to look as professional, as neat, as clean as can be. Because in our industry, you're constantly working, you're busy, you're up and down. It's very easy for you to forget appearance physically. Grooming, tucking in, wearing a shirt properly, that sort of, represents your brand and all those things. So, when they see representatives of PSS, we stand up from a huge bunch in terms of appearance. Now, that also shows the nature to which you are going to do your job. Okay, if you look this way, then you're going to probably do an excellent job. So that's an area in which we try to focus on, which actually helps in our advantage, despite the number of people, the number of fish we have in the sea. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would then necessarily say that this space has competition as well within the sector,
Yeah.
and so forth, or is it quite a not that much, not that many people within the industry? If you were to kind of paint the picture from a
There
South
is a
African
lot.
standpoint, at least,
Mhm.
what does the
There
competitive
is
nature of the space look like?
Oh, super, super competitive. Like it is huge. You have no idea. We are going against industry giants in the same space that have been operational for over 20 years. We are going against national household names, people who've been there even before I was born, you know. There's other new companies more like ourselves, but they've come with a different vibe, different energy. So the competition is very, very steep. So you constantly have to study your competitors, try and see what they are doing and what you can either do differently or what you are not doing that they are doing that you can do. Yeah, so it is very tough. Like the competition is on another level.
I can only imagine. I mean, if you're working with kind of big companies in that sense, that really the market is open for anyone to kind of come in and tap in, right? And I kind of understand the competitive nature of it all. What industries would you say are necessarily needing such a service? You mentioned mining, you mentioned those types of spaces, but is this a sector, is this a type of service required for all sectors? Of that,
Yeah.
anyone who has employees, or who would you say should be on the
Yes,
lookout for needing a service like this?
everyone, everyone. Where safety is literally everywhere, and for a very long time, a lot of companies have looked at safety from a conventional point of view whereby, okay, you're on a construction site, you're in a mine, production, there's moving machinery. It's not necessarily only that, right? Even in the office space, for our people who work in the offices, they're sitting down probably the whole 8 hours of the day, okay? Now you have to look at ergonomics, okay? When you're sitting and staring at the screen for too long, if you work with a computer, that's also a safety hazard, right? You can have a strain on your eye. If you are using the mouse and you're constantly clicking 8 hours a day for the next, 2 or 3 months, you're going to have joint issues, okay? Musculoskeletal disorder. That's also another thing, right? Ergonomics. So in every essence of safety, like all these industries, regardless of how high risk or how low risk, there is always a solution for someone, right? But of course, your high risk ones are the ones that you mentioned, the construction sector, your mining, your fast moving consumer goods like the production, telecommunications, telephone towers, all those things. Those are very high risk, but your subtle ones, office people, when they stand up, it's
Mm.
only coffee breaks, and then they come back to sit again. In the long run, those may have negative effects. And you need a proper safety system in place for somebody to be addressing those things. Probably after like an hour, you stand up, you stretch, you take a walk. Okay? If you've been using your right hand for the mouse for too long, you switch it over, you move to the left hand side to give your right hand a bit of a rest. Okay? So that's everybody, even for your colleagues in the Vuyo Show, you need us as well.
For sure. I mean, the lights are
We'll be
affecting the
happy to
eyes
help
all the
out.
time. And I want to talk about the risk, right? I'm really curious about it from a risk perspective, because as you had said, and I know, right, the risk for two people, the risk for the employees and the risk for the employers, right? Obviously, the risk for the employees is that knowing these things and knowing these safety kind of precautionary measures is important for their own lives. But from an employer's point of view, me being in the US and me kind of having this capitalistic kind of mindset that I've been engraved in by the US economy, which is, you want to make sure that you don't get sued, you don't get in trouble with your employees,
yeah,
and all these other
yeah,
things that could be risk, factors as well. What are
yeah.
some of the risks that you've found that you kind of are really, really, really at the core looking to help both employees and employers look out for when it comes to not being compliant and not
Yeah.
having, a company like the Principal Safety Solutions come on board and
Mm.
mitigate those risks for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So you know that we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act in South Africa, which actually addresses all aspects of work-related and operational safety and all those things. And in that act, there is a section where it addresses the responsibilities of the employer, and also there is a part that addresses the responsibilities of the employee, right? And often both employer and employee either don't know those responsibilities or are just neglecting it to some extent, right? So one of the things that we are trying to do as a PSS is just to raise that awareness that as the employer, by law, you are responsible to A, B, C, and D for your employees. And as an employee, by law, you have this and that and that and that responsibilities. An example being, as per that act, we are told that your employer has the right to create a safe working environment for you. So that means if I ask you as your employer to climb up a 30-meter high roof to do some form of roof maintenance, right? By law, I'm supposed to give you the necessary training to equip you on working at heights. I'm supposed to give you the necessary equipment to do that job, safety harness, hard hats, anchor points, everything that you need so that you can do that job safely. And failure for me as an employer to give you those things, you then as the employee are obligated by that law to refuse the job. Okay.
To
So
refuse the
that's
job.
another
Okay.
major problem that to refuse, to say based on this, I am not going to do this job because it is not safe for me to do so. Okay, it is part of the act. And often a lot of employees don't know that, right? So
Mm.
they end up working unsafely because they feel, you know what, if I don't do this, I don't eat. I might get fired. I might do this, I might do that. So we'll see, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, right? So that's one aspect of it coming in helping the employees to realize that. With the employer as well, we're trying to let them know that if you fail to do this, you are going to have a lot more costs on your hands, right? From legal fees and being sued and being charged and fines and all those things. The cost for complying is always cheaper than actually having been fined. Okay, so we're trying to now sort of find a gap in helping both parties, both employer and both employee. So that is one of the core things that we're trying to do. Yeah,
Yeah, the cost of compliance is cheaper than the cost of what's on the other end. You mentioned
that's it.
being
Always.
fined,
Yeah,
as well as being sued. Like it's so crazy how
yeah,
many times I've heard in the US it's like a big thing. Like people just sue people. Like it's just like a thing. Like people
yeah.
sue their employers,
Mm,
they sue. I remember this one time I was at a restaurant and this lady just slipped. Like people were saying she was pretending to slip and it's just like, but she slipped. And after slipping, the owner came through running to then was like, oh my god, like this lady's gonna sue me, is gonna sue me. And it was a big shocker because he was like, it's insurance, this that. But I'm bringing this up because I'm kind of also understanding that the South African landscape and the African landscape is a little bit different, where people are not as kind of
yeah,
aggressive as one would say the
yeah.
US market is, where they just like, I am gonna come for you for all that you've got. What does that look like for our employ? What, or rather, do you have any case studies of situations where that has happened, where, or do you know any of those type of instances, or big ones or small ones, where something like that happened and someone got sued or they got heavily fined by compliance?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot. There's one that I've heard of from one of the major industry players. I don't know if it's still an ongoing thing, but there's something I've heard on site when I was still employed, and it's a client that, not my client, but it's a company I know very well because I've worked on a number of their sites from my previous employment. Apparently, there's a guy working on a roof, right, with lifelines and all the necessary safety systems in place. Okay, so the employer did do his due diligence, right? But now this is where complacency also comes in. So apparently, this employee who was a contractor did the job, he's done. He's on his way out, but then he saw that man, and there's a patch that I did not really do properly. Let me go back onto that roof, right, just to quickly finish it off, and then I'm done. Now that quickly being, he's just gonna go on, no harness, no nothing, no connection, no anchor points. Like he didn't follow any protocols, and he somehow, some way, stood on the wrong side of the roof, which had a temporary roofing system, which we're still trying to sort of fix up. Then apparently the dude fell about 30, 40 meters from height, right? And that was the end of it. Now, in a case like that, you have to have what you call incident investigations. We need to find out, okay, what happened, what went wrong, was this person trained, was it negligence? It's a whole lengthy, long process up until they can actually determine, okay, who are we to blame for this and that. I don't know how that ended or what was finalized, but I have seen and I have heard of things like that, incidents happening on site, mainly because of negligence. Yeah.
And where does insurance come into play in situations like that? And all of these questions I'm asking because it's kind of giving framework to, a potential customer or potential client that might be listening to this and thinking, okay, I need this service. Where does
Yeah.
insurance come into play? Is that also a precautionary measure? Or does it come in line with what a safety solution type of your principal safety solution type of kind of pre-caution, right? Instead of kind of looking at a post-incident, now starting to think about things then. How do you kind of gauge that, or is this an insurance measurement when it comes to the sectors that you primarily work with?
Yeah, yeah. No, there is. There is. It's not mandatory, as per my understanding, for a company to have some form of liability insurance. But a lot of clients, like the big clients, before they onboard you as a potential supplier or a vendor or somebody who's going to offer them service, they're going to give you a whole list of things and their requirements that they need. And one of those requirements is your insurance, right? Your employer liability insurance and your public liability insurance. So that should something like that happen, they as a client don't really, it's not on them, it's on you, right? And in addition to that, a lot of them would have their own safety policies that you have to abide by and sign and adhere to. So there's stringent measures in place if you want to work with the big guys. They're going to tell you, give us this, give us that, give us that, give us that. They run background checks. They're going to compare against the system and their policies, and strictly for like a week or two or three, sometimes even a month, before they decide, okay, now let's bring you on board as a potential a client, a potential supplier. So there's no gun to your head to have insurance, but for you to reach big clients and have, right service offered, it's an area you actually need to go. And it's one of the things that as principal safety solutions we have to also go through before we are able to do business with a lot of our clients. Yeah. So it's very important. It's very, very important because you don't know what's going to happen on site, especially in our industry.
Mm. I know, I remember, just from a personal standpoint, my grandfather used to work in the mines back in the days. I never met him because he passed away way before I was born, but he used to work in the mines. And one of the things that, a lot of people in the mines had got was like, I think it was lung cancer, or because of the breathing, of just being underground for a long amount of time or long periods of time. But that was something that was kind of an occurrence that we found as something that happens to people who work in such difficult environments and conditions, right? Their health is in jeopardy a lot of the times.
Yeah.
How do you
Mhm.
ensure that you help clients get that as something that is priority, to ensure that they make their working environments not just safe places but also health protected places as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful question. Beautiful question. So one of the things we look out for when we do what we call the safety audits, right? As a service provider to some of our clients, is we identify if they have all the necessary safety things in place. Now, example being, do they have a custom of doing what we call risk assessment? Now, a risk assessment would be either a baseline or job specific, right? So if I'm going to be, for argument's sake, working in a confined space, I'll have to do a risk assessment. Now, when I'm doing that risk assessment, I'm identifying what potential hazards are in that confined space and how I can protect myself from those hazards, right? Is the oxygen level too low? Is the oxygen level too high? Are there any fumes or whatever chemicals in there that I need to be aware of? Do I need to test it? Do I need to sort of blow it out with air for like an hour or two before I can go in? If I do go in, do I have a system that can retrieve me out in an event of an emergency? Do I have an entrant and an attendant? So there's all these questions you need to ask before you get any job done. And often you find that some companies don't have all those things. It's just, okay, let's get the work done and we're good to go. So where we come in then, we then flag all these things from the audit that we do. We say that, no, this is the work that you do, but you don't have a pattern of doing risk assessments or this or that or that or that or that, okay? Which can help prevent such long-term ailments, that might have been occurring in the workplace. Um, yeah, so that's one of the areas in which we come in. So once you do those audits, it's like you have a stethoscope or an X-ray machine, and you just zoom into the work environment and trying to see what they are doing right and what they are doing wrong and what they are not doing and how they can comply for the safety of the employees, but also to the protection of their health and well-being. Yeah.
I think that's another one that I think, is such an important one to make sure to consider. Like, it's, people's livelihoods, but also people's lives
Mhm.
in the same capacity. What
Yeah.
does government's role in a space like yours play? Like, because they are the ones who, at least from a policy standpoint, put the rules in place, one could kind of imagine. But what is the role of governance, the role of policymakers, the role of folks within that space, and how do you partner, work with those types of institutions and organizations in ensuring that you kind of present to a client the efficient and the necessary things needed to ensure that they are compliant?
Yeah. Yeah. The government is actually doing very well on that front in that they've got the necessary systems in place. So they've got the necessary policies, the necessary acts in place. The labor department here is doing a good job in terms of whatever industry you're in, there is rules and regulations and acts that govern that. The problem being now application of those acts and rules and regulations and policies from an employer and an employee point of view. That is the problem. And they also have a provision whereby if you are unfairly dismissed or perhaps maybe refusing to do a certain job that you do it was unsafe and you can back it up, you can actually get the help of the government to sort of, you know, talk for you and sort of, defend you and protect you and make sure that, you don't lose your job. All those things are in place. Application and adherence is the thing. And I think that's where our employers can actually do more in raising awareness that, guys, we've got all these things in place, right? Look into it. Like, for instance, one organization that I work for, they made it their aim that we give every employee a copy of the Occupational Health and Safety Act every time a new edition comes up. And there's an enforcement of you need to read it, be familiar with what applies to you in the workplace. If there's anything we're not doing that we can improve on, you let us know as management, and we're gonna try our best to comply. So you get those organizations that are actually hands-on, but then sadly, the majority, as per my knowledge and understanding, the awareness is not so big, you know. So yeah, it's something that the employers need to do more, just to emphasize. But everything is in place from government point of view. They actually do very well in that instance. Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So if you are
Yeah.
not complying, it's on you. And the risk of it all
For
being
you.
sued, my goodness, it's on you. Unless, of course,
Everything
you
is
reach
for
out to
you.
Principal Safety Solutions to get that sorted out for you. Who would you say
I
is the
mean,
most ideal client for not just for the sector that you're in, but for your company? Like, who is the ideal candidate of a client or a customer of what it is that you're providing?
I would say our ideal, and I don't want to mention maybe one company per se, but I'll mention an address sector where I feel, because of the nature of how high risk their jobs are, they actually need to be more hands on deck. I would say the mining industry. Yeah. The mining industry work for their own, like I said, own acts, own laws, own everything, governing them in terms of the safety point of view. But I mean, you're underground, you're mining, the risks are always higher. You know, so we are trying to get into that space. It is not easy getting into the mining space in South Africa. Um, it's tough because of, the measures they have in place is very stringent. There's a lot of hurdles you need to overcome in order for you to eventually get there. But we hope for one of these days to not be able to land our first mining client. We're working towards that. But that's the one industry that I can say any company in that industry needs to be hands-on in terms of safety 24/7, because anything can go wrong at any time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the most, maybe it's not, maybe it's like climbing on buildings, but like the mining is, I think, probably one of the most dangerous jobs to have. As I said earlier, like my grandfather was in the mining industry, and he did,
Mhm.
I don't think he even surpassed like the year of 35 or 40. That's how like dangerous that
Yeah.
sector is. But I'm optimistic that that's probably good. That door is gonna open up for you guys. You'll get your
We
mining
hope so. Thank you. Thank you. I
your
mean,
mining
we've
plan.
been on the show already. I'm sure it's going to get us places.
You mentioned two components, which I kind of want to unpack now, which is the service side of it, which we've kind of just we've unpacked quite a little bit within this conversation, and now the product side of it, which is where you are providing a product, right, for the space that you're in. What does that look like? What type of products? If you kind of to give us an overlay of that as well, and how that side of the business is currently going or looking forward to go.
Mhm. It's doing good. It's doing good. Of course, there's always room for improvement. So, in addition to our core model of offering training, we also do the distribution of PPE, personal protective equipment, and other safety-related equipment. That being your confined space rescue kits, your working at heights equipment, harnesses, lifelines, anchor points, your fire extinguishers, anything that can equip you in doing your work safely. And because we are still at the level we are, we're not, a big industry player yet. Hopefully, we're going to get there one day. But what we've done is we have approached a lot of industry giants, right? And we told them, look here, this is what we do, and we can get your products across easily for you because we've got this clientele and that clientele and that clientele, right? Is a way in which we can work together and help distribute whatever equipments and manufacturings and things are producing. And that has been one of our go-to, where we've had a good agreement with a number of major companies in the same space to distribute and to resell some of the equipment and productions, right? So it will be coming from Principal Safety Solutions, but it is manufactured by an already existing manufacturer, and we are one of the few or limited distributors or resellers of such products. And that is something that has been very good for us. It is doing quite well. Of course, there's room for growth, and we hope to eventually get to a point whereby we cut away a lot of middlemen, where it will be straight from manufacturer to us to distribute, right? For now, it's from manufacturer to a distributor and then to us, where we resell. Okay, so that's the second aspect of our business nature, which we are looking at eventually improving upon and making sure that we do more in that sector. Yeah.
Yeah. So that in and of itself, again, is like it's a I see it as two different kind of models, which can beautifully be intertwined, right? Because then you're able to provide a product to an existing client, for an example. So it makes it a little bit more easier for that, because we've already built those trust experiences, or vice versa, where you're providing supplies to a potential client, and then they get into the training side of it, right? So they
Yeah.
speak to each other, but fundamentally two different approaches to the same type of industry. How do you kind of do that? Is it from an e-commerce standpoint, or is it a little bit more traditional in how you guys resell the products, or more relationship based? How does that model look like?
So we haven't ventured into the e-commerce space yet. That is also part of our roadmap for 2026. That we are going to try and see if we can implement. And this is something that actually, I will mention, our CEO is a woman, right? And in leading a company in an industry that is dominated by men, she has actually done extremely well in helping navigate PSS the right direction. I'm basically just a foot soldier operation point of view. I just go to the right people based on, of course, the trajectory that has been built. So e-commerce, that's the next year we're looking into that. For now, what we are doing is a normal distribution, right? So we get a client that will say, okay, PSS, quote me on A, B, C, and D, right? Now already, because we've got all these partnerships with this already existing client, we know all the things that they sell, we know all the things that they distribute. We've got a catalog, and we've got our understanding of how much they would charge us, right? So what we then do is, okay, you come, you request A, B, C, and D from me. I go then to my business partner who I've got an understanding with, supply me with this and that and that and that. So I'm like the middle person, right? So you are my client, but also I am the client of an already existing manufacturer of the company that is selling its stuff. So then I source that on your behalf, put a slight markup on for myself, and then I distribute it to you. As per the
What a smart
specification,
approach.
as per the requirement to the team. Yeah.
And I say that because particularly it would be labor, it would rather be cost and capital inducing to do it the other way around, where you
Exactly.
buy and kind of
Yeah.
take in all the inventory to sell. So another smart approach to
Yeah.
how you went about into getting into that space as well. And as obviously as it increases and it grows, as you said, the next step would then be going directly to the supplier of the products.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I think that's such a business approach. I like the fact that you guys are very intentional about how you're doing business. It's not just like haphazardly doing it and haphazardly getting into it. Where did that muscle for you come from? The business muscle, right? You've kind of shared with us the skills muscle came from training and kind of being in the space for quite a while. But there's nothing like business that, rather, business is completely different to the skill. So both between you and your CEO, where did the kind of the business muscle get trained, if you are to recall?
Mm, mm. So I'll put that mainly on hard work and how I've been brought up, as opposed to the actual business master, right? And I'm gonna justify why I say so. So something probably I didn't mention is originally I'm Ghanaian, right? I'm from Ghana,
Mm.
West Africa, born there, to two Ghanaian parents. Then my folks moved to South Africa,
What's your
late
Ghanaian
90s.
name, Samuel? Sorry.
My, Ga-
What?
no problem, no problem. My Ghanaian name is Te,
Te. Wait, because
yeah,
I
Te,
know you have a
T-Y-E.
your birthday is based on your name is based on the day you're born. So yours is
Yes,
Te.
yes.
Okay. So
So, so,
which
so
day is that?
with my tribe, right? With my tribe, briefly, I come from a tribe whereby you are based on the level in which you are born in the family, whether first, second, or third, or fourth. There is a name that you acquire, right? And then I will go on to the day in which you are born, and then there's another name waiting for you. So most of the time in Ghana,
Interesting.
when you are born, as per tradition, you've got about two, three names just sitting there waiting for you to take. So with
Wow.
me, because I'm the third male in my family, I've got two older brothers, and then I'm the third guy. I got the name Ted, but also
Okay.
I'm born on a Thursday, so that makes me Yao.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so the
Okay.
full name is then Samuel Te Kwao Yao, and then the surname
Oh.
Hogah. Quite lengthy.
Oh.
Yeah. So so
All
so
right,
so
you can
that's that's
continue your
that's the
story.
background.
Just,
Yeah.
giving a little bit of
No, no problem. No
Ghanaian.
problem.
I know my
Yeah.
Ghanaian a little bit, a little bit.
No, you're doing well. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming from that background and that family, it's just been hard work, right? It's just been hard work from word go. Like I started cooking at a very young age. Growing up in Ghana, I would carry a bucket of maize meal on my head. That's probably now 7, 8 years. And I would walk to a house that is probably about a kilometer and a half, probably even more, away from my house to go and have those mealies or maize meals grinded into fine pieces. Right? Once it's done, somebody helps you put it back on your head again, and then you take a nice, long, easy trek back home. Okay. You get home, you help with the cooking. Yes, I was the last one, but I didn't have it easy. I was trained, you know. So in a nutshell, then we've had that history of hard work in anything you do. When I was growing up and everything through all my ages up until now. So when we decided, we are gonna venture into the whole business thing, it was not a matter of trying and error. It was not a matter of we're gonna lazy about it. No, no, no. We were gonna put in hard energy, time, and just hard work. But of course, hard work incorporated with doing the necessary research, speaking to the right people. There's been people who've been successful in the industry before us, seeking opinions and advice from them and trying to, get every information we need to try and help this thing move forward. So when the muscle of the business is actually built on hard work and me being very inquisitive, I ask a lot of questions. I do a lot of research. I dig. I dig. I'm always on the net digging, reading up on people, trying to find out what worked for him. He's in accounting, but how can I use this model in safety? And then I try and craft it like that and see what the outcome would be. So it's been hard work based on how I've been raised up. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's always amazing to hear someone's backstory because it gives us also context to what kind of got them and what drives them most importantly, what how you were kind of born and raised and your environment stems and brings up who you are and what we get to see today. And I guess what we are seeing with your company is exactly that as well, seeing that trajectory of growth. I mean, you guys being able to secure, major clients within the first 6 months it's game changing, right? And it's something to be proud of and something to really as you were saying, put that on your resume. Let the small folks know that the big guys have come on board, so they should come along too.
Yeah.
Right? What is I mean, you mentioned you're Ghanaian. What does a global expansion plan look like for you, right? Does it look like taking over Africa? Look going helping those American business owners who are getting sued every Thursday because someone is trying to, rip them off because they're not compliant. But fundamentally, my question is, what does global expansion look like for you? Is that something that you guys have, you think about, you have conversations about, and hope to do in the future as well?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely it is in the works, it is in the pipeline. So like I've mentioned earlier, we've got a roadmap going as far as 3, 4, 5 years from now, with phases of what we want to do and how we want to do them and all those things. So it's part of the pipeline of what we want to achieve. We don't only want to be Johannesburg-based safety company. We don't want to only be TSS that is only South Africa bound, right? We want to get to a place where we can have an office or a branch in the States. We want to get to a place where we can have another office in Ghana or wherever the case may be, global extension, right? But primarily, we want to get to a point whereby PSS is more self-sufficient. What I mean by that is I want us to get to a point where we don't have to put in as much work as we are putting it now in the early stages. We want to get it to a point whereby it is well-oiled machine, it is running smoothly with very little intervention and input. That's one of the goals we hope to achieve for the future globally. Globally, right? We soon might venture into podcasting and collaborate with you one of these days. It's in the pipelines.
Listen, man, listen. As long as it's global, I'm part of it, right? That's the mission, and
I
that's
mean,
kind of our slogan on the show here is that we're going global, and and it's beautiful going from local to global and expanding and letting the rest of the world know, who you are. People from different parts of the world hearing your story and knowing that there's a guy in South Africa called Samuel who's doing this incredible work. But you mentioned that you do have a CEO in the company. How big is your team? And something that I think is also fundamentally interesting about your business is that as we're entering into the AI era, right, where everything is digitized and everything is
yeah,
going into AI mode, but something like what you guys are doing can't really be much replicated from an AI perspective, or it could be. But how big is your team, and how do you kind of see that as something that do you see that as an advantage? Are you aware of that factor that AI cannot necessarily replace you as easily as it could
yeah,
the accountant guy that you mentioned earlier?
yeah, definitely. AI is a force to be reckoned with, and we don't want to be that company that sleeps on AI. Trust me, we are working, we are looking, we are having conversations. We're trying to find a way in which we can incorporate it, right, in our business model to make things smooth sailing and easy for us. Um, but our team comprises of about 5 people. So currently we only have one full-time employee in the company, which is myself. I'm serving as the head of operations. And then there is our CEO, who happens to be my wife. She is giving all the directions on what to be done, when, and how. I just say yes, ma'am, and then I execute. So she's been doing very great on that front. She has a strong business management experience. She is in dentistry, by the way, so she's been in practice management for quite a number of years. Patient relations manager for quite some few years. She's dealt with people from all sorts of backgrounds, so she really has that business mind. So she's serving as CEO for us, doing a great job. Then we have the rest are more on consultancy basis, right? So we've got a very good social media management guy who is running our social media platforms for us. He's doing the uploads, He's doing the necessary researches in terms of marketing, what's going, what's not going, just making sure that the brand awareness is there. We've got a brand strategist who's got his own company called Lumino Studios. He's helping us with now strategizing moving forward in terms of sort of, from a brand point of view. How can we move from a company to just becoming a household brand? So he's working hand in hand with our social media guy. And then we have, of course, an accountant that is also helping us greatly to balance the books and to make sure we comply from the South African Revenue Service point of view. We don't want to be owing people money.
Yeah, that's something you don't want to see happen. That's a risk you don't want to take.
We can easily get shut down just like that. So he's managing all that for us, finances, and making sure that everything from a compliance point of view is going. And then we've got one of our key members in the team who is our lead facilitator, Carrington. He is from Zimbabwe. He is running in terms of all training related things, is our head trainer. So when there's training, he steps in to do that. He coordinates other facilitators to have that, the training done. If we do have a lot more clients we need to train, So I think we are about 5, 6, but 3 are more full-time hands-on. And then the rest is from the consultancy point of view. Is that a good thing? Yes. For now, it is looking at the level and the place we are. Eventually, we want to get bigger and therefore make all these people more permanent and eventually create jobs as well. South Africa has a very high unemployment rate, and that is one of the things that we want to achieve as 24-hour safety solutions is to create jobs and try to bring in more people, to support their households. Yeah.
It's such an important thing. I think that you're touching base on there, that employment and it being such a challenge within the country. But I think you guys are doing pretty well at that. I mean, there are so many CEOs that I have spoken to that are like, I wear the social media hat, I wear the accounting hat, I wear the COO and the CEO hat, and they wear all the hats. But at least you have some support around you, which I think is it's a very, important thing. And shout out to Mrs. Hogah, who is, who's doing who's a CEO, but also the support. I think a lot of, people like that should be commended and applauded for that work, because it takes a lot to support someone within a position that has a vision, right? So shout outs to her for the support and for the being alongside the vision as well, and doing the work to see the company through as well. So you are in a good place for sure. You are definitely in a good place, and
Blessed.
I'm
Blessed.
really,
Thank you.
yes. No, for sure, for sure. I mean, yeah, we've definitely looked at your business. I've kind of asked everything that I've had in mind, and you've answered everything quite eloquently as well at that. Like now, I felt like I was in a master class of like, okay, this is compliance. This is how I was like, okay, I'm taking notes, and I'm hoping that everyone at home as well has been taking notes, as for themselves too, to understand that when you are running a business, there's more to it than just profit and loss and balancing the books, etc. But there's also the importance of being compliant, and that's where companies like Principal Safety Solutions come into play. Is there anything else that you'd like to share to the audience watching, whether it is about what you guys are doing and how to go about acquiring your services and etc. before we say goodbye?
Yes. We are on all social media platforms. We are on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Just search up on Threads. Just search up Principal Safety Solutions. We are the We have a fully functional website that is beautifully made, www.principalsafetysolutions.co.za. Just go on there to get our service. You can just go there, contact us, send us an email, explain what you're looking for. Even if it's an advice point of view, we want to create awareness. So it's not necessarily what can we gain from a financial point of view, but if you have a question and you just have some, advice you need from a safety point of view, we are more than happy to share the little we know to help you remain safe in your workplace. So that's us.
What do you say to someone who says compliance is expensive, Samuel? Is it expensive? If you were to maybe give us figures as well from the from a lower price point to maybe a higher price point, what is the need like? Where does it sit to a compliance standpoint? And then kind of compare that to what they'd be paying if they weren't compliant.
Yeah. So yeah, the compliance is not cheap, right? But what you get in return after complying is always greater than the cost of complying. That means if you spend, let's say, 20,000 rand for argument's sake on compliance, you stand a chance of getting 80,000 rand in business in return. That's it. That's it. But also there's no price on a human's life. Okay, so there's no compliance that can be so expensive that we have to ignore. And then we undermine the life of a person. Even if it's 1,000,000 rands, it has to be done. But the outcome, I mean, PSS, we only managed to get our first major client after we had complied fully. And the cost of that compliance, we had already got what we came back threefold. So yes, it may sound tedious and expensive, but trust me, the result afterwards is always beneficial. And you save a lot of headache in court and cases and being shut down and blacklisted and being fined. Oh, man. Yeah, that's what I tell people. Compliance,
Yeah.
compliance, there's no price for compliance. It has to be done.
So your figures I got was between 20,000 and 1,000,000 rand. That's where you're looking
That's it.
at.
And beyond.
It could be anything be in between that. So buckle up
That's
and
it.
get the compliance in place. I'm gonna say goodbye by asking it. I mean, I don't think it's controversial, but one might say it is. Marikana was an incident that, I don't know if you're aware of the story, and if you are, a little bit of context in that regard as well, but which was in the mining sector, right? So, what's your take on what happened in Marikana? From the people that we had seen the stories across news. I think it was a safety issue or something. Tell us a little bit about that and your thoughts on that before we wrap it up.
I'd be lying if I was to tell you that I know everything about that Marikana story. I will not even lie. My knowledge on that story is almost as vague as anybody else, right? Simply because there's that information and then there's that information and then there's that and then there's that. That source says this, the other source says that, so you're not really sure actually which information is which, except on what you have seen on TV, which is shooting of mine workers and this and that and that and that. So maybe let me do more research and then at our next meeting sometime in the future I'll have more light to shed on
Yes,
Americana because I promise you anything I tell you now will be a lie.
I asked that because mining is a space that you had explained that you wanna get into, and I know it was quite a
Yeah,
big story within a South African context as well. So, next time you come on the show, I'm definitely gonna be like, so tell us. That's gonna be the first question. Tell us about
we start
Marikana.
with that.
What
We
went
hit the
down?
ground running with that. I'll prepare, I'll dig deep, I'll come with a huge notebook that big. Then we start with that. We can even talk just about Americana.
Yes, yes, and the compliance issues in there because something went wrong, right? Something happened.
No, definitely.
But this was
A
great.
lot of
This
things
was
went wrong.
definitely which we're trying to avoid, right? That's definitely what we're trying to avoid. No, I think this was
Exactly.
absolutely great. I don't want to take much more of your time. I know it's evening right now in South Africa, so I'm not going to take much more of your time, and I don't know, allow you to go back to you're either going to go back to work or go back to Mrs. Hogah, one of the two, right now. But thank you so
Work
much for
when
joining
Mrs.
me.
Hogah.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm saying work when Mrs. Hogah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Samuel, for your time, and thank you for educating us today on, the importance of compliance, of safety, and the risk that comes into play when those are not in place. Wishing you all the best with the next, I'd say, the next half of what is going to be the first year of your baby, crawling and getting its footing within the world. I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and it's definitely something to be on the lookout for and to be on the watch for. Is a business like yours open and ready for, one could ask, investment? Is that something that is even a necessity for a sector like yours? Like if someone's an investor and they're sitting there
Yes,
thinking, "Ooh, sounds like an opportunity," is it something that is
definitely.
open to investment?
Def- Definitely, we 100%. Even you can invest in PSS. You can have that discussion. It's open. We're always looking at ways in which we can collaborate and have more people come on board, more hands on deck. You can never really grow alone.
Mm,
Or if you want to grow alone, the level at which you want to grow alone is going to be slower than growing with other people. So yeah, we are
yeah.
open for investment. We are open for those discussions to see who sees the vision that we see as PSS under the leadership of our CEO. And yeah, we can talk.
I like that. That's what the businessman says. Says, let's talk. Not no, we're still thinking about it, but let's talk business. Let's talk business.
Let's talk. We're always
Absolutely
ready.
incredible. That's all we have in store for you at home. Thank you so much to Simon for joining me. Thank you, Simon, and thank you at home for tuning in. As I said earlier, I hope that you have taken notes on this conversation because I have learned so much. I don't know if you guys could see, like my face was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And now I know. So I'm hoping that you have also gotten a lot of insight from this conversation and learned a thing or two. Samuel, have a fantastic evening. And to everyone at home, I'll see you on the next
So much.
episode. Cheers for
Appreciate
now.
the invite and the time. Cheers.